They always said daughters were temporary. Sons carry the family name forward. That was my father's favorite line, the one he pulled out every time I asked why my brother got the SAT tutor and I got a library card. Every time I asked why his extracurriculars had a budget and mine had to figure it out. Every time the conversation turned to college and my father's face went somewhere far away, somewhere I wasn't invited. I was 17 the first time I heard it said out loud with no softening, no apology wrapped around it. I'd just gotten my acceptance letter from state, not my dream school, but a real school, a good school, and I'd done it entirely on my own. I found the application fee waiver. I wrote the essay at the kitchen table at midnight after my shift at the diner. I asked my guidance counselor to mail the transcripts because I didn't trust myself not to lose the envelope. When I put the letter on the dinner table, my father looked at it the way you look at junk mail. "We're not paying for that," he said. My mother didn't look up from her plate. "But you're paying for Marcus," I said. I tried to keep my voice level. I'd practiced this. I'd rehearsed it in the bathroom mirror 3 times. His tuition, his dorm, his meal plan, you already said. "Marcus carries this family forward," my father said. Like that was a complete sentence. Like that answered everything. A daughter marries into someone else's family. "We're not spending $40,000 so you can go change your last name in 4 years. I remember the sound of the fork hitting my plate. I don't remember putting it down. "So that's it," I said. "You're smart," my mother offered then, finally looking up. "You'll figure something out." I did. It just didn't look anything like what they expected. I want to be clear about something before I go further. I didn't leave that night in a blaze of dramatic speeches. I didn't throw anything. I didn't cry in front of them, because I had already learned years before that dinner that crying in front of my father only confirmed his theory that daughters were too emotional to be taken seriously. So I folded that letter back into its envelope, went upstairs, and sat on the edge of my bed for a long time. Then I started making a plan. The financial aid office at State was more helpful than I expected. My counselor, a woman named Mrs. Okafor, who had a collection of motivational calendars on her wall and meant every single one of them, helped me file as an independent student. It took paperwork. It took my father refusing, in writing, to contribute anything, a document he signed almost cheerfully, as if I'd finally asked for something reasonable. I worked 3 jobs my first semester. Mornings at the campus coffee cart before 7. Afternoons in the library as a reshelver. Weekends at the same diner back home, taking the 2-hour bus round trip because the tips were better than anything near campus. I shared a room in an off-campus house with 4 other girls, and we kept a whiteboard in the kitchen tracking whose turn it was to buy dish soap. I will not pretend it was romantic. It wasn't. There were nights I ate crackers and peanut butter for dinner because I'd miscalculated the week. There was one February where the heat in the house broke for 11 days, and I wore my coat to bed. There was a Tuesday in my junior year when I called my mother just to hear a familiar voice, and she spent 12 minutes telling me about Marcus's internship before asking, as an afterthought, how I was doing. "Fine," I said. "Good." "That's good," she said. And then she told me my father was thinking about getting a dog. I didn't call home much after that. What I had instead were the people I found along the way. My roommate Diane, who proofread every paper I wrote and never once made me feel like a burden for asking. My professor Dr. Reeves, who taught corporate finance like it was a language worth learning and who, when I stayed after class one Thursday to ask a question, ended up talking with me for an hour about where I wanted to go. He's the one who first said the words healthcare administration to me like they were a door I hadn't noticed. "You think in systems," he told me. "You should be working in one that matters." I transferred that advice into an internship application that same night. I got the internship, then a second one. Then, in my final semester, a part-time analyst position at a mid-sized hospital network in the city, 3 hours from home, which turned into a full-time offer before I'd even walked across the stage. My graduation day was a Saturday in May. I reserved 2 seats, 3rd row, on the aisle. I told myself I reserved them just in case my father's thinking had shifted. In case my mother had worked up to saying something I needed to hear, they didn't come. Diane sat in one of those seats instead. She brought flowers, the grocery store kind wrapped in cellophane, and she cried harder than I did when they called my name. Her mom, who'd driven 4 hours to watch Diane graduate, hugged me afterward like she'd known me for years. "Your parents must be so proud," she said, "the way people say things when they don't know." "Sure," I said. I moved into a studio apartment that August. I bought a second-hand couch, and a coffee maker and a lamp with a crooked shade, and I stood in the middle of that small room on my first night there, and felt something I didn't have a word for yet. Not happiness exactly. Something quieter. Something that had to do with the fact that every object in that apartment was there because I'd put it there. I didn't contact my family. They didn't contact me. 7 years passed. I was 31 when my brother called. I almost didn't answer. The number was still saved as Marcus Home in my phone, a relic from an era when that word meant something, and I stood there watching it ring and thought about all the things I could be doing instead. I answered on the last ring. "Emma." His voice was the same, slightly formal, the way it got when he wanted something. "Hey, it's Marcus." "I know," I said. "I'm getting married," he said. "End of September. Mom and Dad wanted me to invite you." I noticed the construction of that sentence immediately. Not "I wanted to invite you." Mom and Dad wanted him to. I filed that away. "Congratulations," I said. "Her name is Christine. She's a nurse. You'd like her." A pause. "Will you come?" I thought about it for exactly as long as it deserved. "I'll think about it," I said. I did think about it. For 3 weeks. Diane told me not to go. "Nothing good comes from re-entering a story that already had an ending," she said, which was a very Diane way to put it. Dr. Reeves. When I mentioned it over coffee, we'd stayed in touch. The way you do with the people who changed your direction, said only that I should do whatever let me sleep at night. What let me sleep was going. Not for them. For me. For the version of me that wanted to walk into that room and be entirely fine and prove it to no one but herself. I bought a dress that was appropriate and slightly too expensive, and I sent back the RSVP card with my name and a +1 left blank. I drove myself. The venue was a converted barn outside the town where we grew up, the kind of place that costs more than it looks. Round tables with linen cloths, string lights strung from the rafters. A bar that started doing business well before the ceremony ended. I found my seat. I did not go looking for my parents. They found me. My father looked older. My mother was wearing a blue dress I didn't recognize, which made sense. 7 years is a long time, and I had not been there to recognize anything. She hugged me the way you hug someone at a funeral, the brief, formal kind that covers the obligation without requiring anything more. "You look well," she said. "Thank you," I said. "So do you." My father shook my head and said my name once, and I said his, and we all stood in the silence of people who have decided, mutually and without a single spoken agreement, not to say the thing. The ceremony was fine. Marcus cried a little, which surprised me. Christine seemed warm. I found myself hoping she was. It was during the reception, during the part where the music is too loud and the speeches are over and people drift between tables with drinks in their hands, that Christine found me. She sat down across from me without asking, the way confident people do, and said, "You're Marcus's sister." "I am," I said. "He told me about you." She paused. "Not much, but some." "That sounds about right," I said, and she laughed, which I hadn't expected. "What do you do?" she asked. "Healthcare administration," I said. "I'm the operations director at Meridian Health Partners." Something shifted in her expression. Not alarm, more like the look people get when a coincidence lands unexpectedly. "Meridian," she repeated. "In the city." "Yes." She set down her glass. "Marcus has been interviewing there," she said slowly, "for the last 2 months. A senior analyst position." I knew the position. I had sat in on 2 of the hiring committee meetings. I had read the shortlisted resumes. I kept my face very still. "What did he interview for?" I asked. She told me the department. The role. the hiring manager's name, who reported to me. And then she said, "He's been telling everyone he has a contact there, someone on the inside." She looked at me carefully. "He never mentioned it was you." I took a sip of my water. "No," I said. "I don't imagine he did." I excused myself shortly after and stood outside by the parking lot for a while, watching the sky go from orange to dark blue. I wasn't angry. That surprised me. I'd expected anger. What I felt was something more like clarity, the specific, calm kind that comes when something complicated suddenly makes simple sense. My brother had called me not because my parents wanted to reconnect. He'd called me because somewhere in his networking, or his conversations with Christine, or his general tracking of the world, he'd found out where I worked. And he had decided that 7 years of silence was a reasonable price to pay to get me in the same room as his family, within reaching distance of a favor he hadn't asked for yet. I drove home that night. I did not say goodbye to my parents. I wasn't sure what I would have said. The favor came 11 days later. A LinkedIn message, formal and carefully worded in the way that only sounds natural if you've rewritten it several times. "Emma, it was great to see you at the wedding. I wanted to reach out regarding the opportunity at Meridian. I understand you may have some familiarity with the process." I stared at it for a long time. Here is what I knew. Marcus was on the short list. His resume was strong. I'll give him that. He'd done good work, and his references checked out. The hiring committee was close to a decision, and it would have been made with or without me. Here is what I also knew. He had never, in 31 years, asked me how I was doing. He had never asked what it cost me to put myself through school while he had tutors and meal plans and a car that was waiting in the driveway when he got his license. He had never once, in the 7 years I had been gone, picked up a phone. Until there was something he needed. I thought about Mrs. Okafor and her motivational calendars. I thought about Diane in the third-row seat with grocery store flowers. I thought about the February with no heat, and the Tuesday I called home and heard about a dog. I wrote back, "Hi Marcus, thanks for reaching out. I've had limited involvement in the hiring process for that role, and I want to be transparent that I can't influence the outcome in either direction. The team will make their decision based on the interviews and references. I hope it goes well for you." It was true. All of it. He didn't write back. The hiring committee made their decision 2 weeks later. Marcus didn't get the position not because of me, not in spite of me, but because the other candidate had 7 more years of directly relevant experience and came with a recommendation from someone the hiring manager had worked with for a decade. These things happen. They have nothing to do with sisters. My mother called me for the first time in 7 years, on a Thursday evening in October. I answered. "He didn't get the job," she said, which was her way of opening a conversation. "I heard," I said. "He thought you might have." "I didn't do anything," I said. "And I also didn't do anything for him. That's what fair looks like." A pause. A long one. "We made mistakes," she said finally, quietly. The words sounded like they had been sitting in a drawer for a while, getting taken out and put back, with you. I let that sit in the air between us. "I know," I said. "Do you think?" She stopped. Started again. "Is there any chance that we could?" "I don't know," I said. And that was the most honest answer I had. I don't know yet. We talked for 23 minutes, which was longer than we'd talked in years, and almost none of it was about Marcus or the job or the wedding or any of it. She asked about my apartment. I told her I'd moved bigger place now, closer to work, a real couch that I'd bought new. She told me my father's back had been giving him trouble. I said I was sorry to hear it, and I meant it. The way you mean things about people you have complicated feelings for. When we hung up, I sat with my phone in my hand for a while. I am not going to tell you that the call fixed anything. It didn't. There is no version of this story where a single phone call erases what it felt like to be 17 with an acceptance letter that no one celebrated, or 22 at a graduation with 2 empty chairs in the 3rd row. Damage is not a math problem where new numbers cancel old ones. But I will tell you this. I am 30, 1 years old. I have an apartment I chose and a career I built without anyone's help, and a promotion that came last spring that I didn't call home about because there was no habit of calling home, but maybe there will be a habit someday. I have Diane, who flew in last Christmas and slept on the couch I bought new, and Dr. Reeves, and a small group of people who know my middle name and my coffee order and the thing I'm afraid of that I don't talk about in public. That is what family looks like when you build it yourself. It doesn't look like the family in the photographs on my parents' hallway wall, the ones I assume still hang there, the ones where Marcus is in the center of every frame, and I am always slightly to the side, slightly at the edge, the one whose presence was never quite confirmed. It looks like the people who showed up when there was nothing to gain. And if you have ever been the one standing at the edge of the frame, the one whose seat at the table was always conditional, whose worth was always measured against someone else's, I want you to hear this. You were not too much. You were not too little. You were not the wrong shape for the family you were handed. You were just in the wrong room. Go find your room. Build it if you have to. Fill it with people who know the difference between showing up for you and showing up for what you can do for them. 7 years ago, I drove to a city 3 hours from home with a second-hand couch and a coffee maker and a lamp with a crooked shade. Last spring, I bought that lamp, a replacement shade. I've stopped leaving things crooked just because that's how I first found them.